Shalom and good day, all. This is Healing29 back again for another indie comic review, and in this indie comic review I'm covering the TMNT Usagi Yojimbo crossover and also Worldtr33 by James Tynion. I'll now get things organised for the first one that will be reviewed. So I'll be starting off with the TMNT Usagi Yojimbo crossover issue 1. So starting off with first things first, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that is happening inside with the story? Sure enough it does, but before I do, I want to show you the whole cover. And as you can see here, we happen to have the whole cover of this particular crossover. We've of course got the character Where When. We also have some people connected to the Usagi Yojimbo universe, as well as the turtles. For the cover rating, I gave this an 8 out of 10. Now it's time to move into the internal art as we have a look around with the story. So here is some of the art around the beginning of this story. And we see a lot of things taking place in Japan with Usagi Yojimbo. We also get a comic reference there. Even though it wasn't necessary for this crossover, I definitely appreciate it anyway, and it will help improve the score rating. Of course, we get to see a bit of talk happening there with some of the characters in the world of Usagi Yojimbo. Now, as we start to move into the middle of the book, we catch up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they're going up against a character by the name of exactly that, Where When. So, really interesting, really clever in using it with the title of this particular arc between them both. And as we start to draw towards the end, we finally get the turtles catching up with Usagi Yojimbo, but the thing is, in Usagi Yojimbo's world, turtles are sort of like seen as the evil Kappa, or like an evil Kappa beast. And now it's sort of like, what do we do now? So, very interesting, very clever. Definitely looking forward to the next issue. So, for the internal art rating, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Now it's time to move into the area of the story. And first things first, did we get anything time related? Sure enough, we did. But I want to include the bonus thing, which was actually the comic reference. In regards to this, with the time we had later, soon, and meanwhile being used for allocations of time. But for the comic reference, we had the Usagi Yojimbo Senso particular run or arc. Next is the area of the locations, which it takes place in Japan. We didn't quite get whereabouts where the turtles were within the story, though it would not have hurt to include it in the story. I don't care if it's in New York or somewhere outside of New York, just anywhere. Of course, the cast of characters consisting of Lord Noriyuki. We had Tomo. We had, of course, Usagi Yojimbo, as this is actually taking place in the world of Usagi Yojimbo, being crossed over with the turtles. Or they're coming to his place, not him going to there. We also had the characters of Jotaro, Yukichi. We had General Gen. We had Kubo. We had, of course, the villain, Dr. Werewin. And last but not least, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. For the overall story rating in this, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Thank you so much, Stan Sakai. I am looking forward to reading the next issue. Now it's time to move into Worldtr33. So, as we begin to move into Worldtr33, the first area to cover that we need to cover is exactly that, the cover. Does the cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside with the story? Sure enough it does, to which I give it a 7.5 out of 10. Now it's time to move into the internal arts, which we'll have a look around the beginning, middle and end, as well as some of the things that are happening story-wise. So as the story begins, we end up meeting up with someone who is basically assassinating people, and it looks like random people that they are taking down on their list. Their reason why yet, we don't know. As we start to move towards the middle of the story, we meet one of the characters, who is named Gabriel, and we get to see some of the things that happen around him. And last but not least, we move towards the end. And yes, this is a character that's not afraid to show any of their parts. So for the internal art, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Yeah, that's right, not very high. So now it's time to move in the area of the story rating. So the first area that we need to cover in the story is what time does this take place? Or time and date does this take place? We learned that this takes place, or this story takes place in the year of 2024. The locations, there could really be some additional information put in here to improve the area of locations, because about the only one I managed to come across in the story was a police station in location. So in that, it's his storytelling really needs to be cleaned up, and I mean really needs to be cleaned up, and it will show in the story rating when I move to the story rating. Moving into the last area, and that is the cast of characters. One of the people who we got to see at the beginning of the story, and he also died alongside his wife, was Henry. We didn't get the wife's name. Then we were introduced to the character of Allison, who she knew a friend by the name of Gibson, or Gibson being her brother. And after that, we got to meet the character of Gabriel. Apart from that, let's now move to the story rating. For the overall story rating for this, even though this is meant to sort of like exploring almost like computer transhuman murder, if I were to put it, this story's execution wasn't very strong at all. I think it could have done with some more elements, and I think James Tynion needs to have a break from certain story runs so that they can breathe, and to get other story runs up and going so that they can have time to breathe. It's the only thing that I'd bring across, because sometimes I feel he tries to put too much effort in little story and only little comes out of it. And sometimes you could put a little bit of effort into one story and you get a lot out of it, depending on what the story is and where it takes place. So the overall story rating for this is a 6 out of 10. Until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.